Sure. And so I think we called it, or I called it, neurodiversity in YA lit. It's okay not to be okay. So that is completely misleading. And I came up with that title actually. I presented this book on a panel of two at the Louisiana Book Fest in October in Baton Rouge, which for me was a great joy because it meant I get to go home, see my friends in Baton Rouge where we mainly raised our children. And I came up with that title because the organizer of that event wanted to put me on the panel with another YA writer who wrote about had a protagonist who was kind of neuroatypical. But mainly it's to get people to come to your talk. I should have called it, sex in high school lots, and then I would have gotten more people. But I mean, neurodiversity typically actually refers to people who are on the autism spectrum. But it wasn't until I'd done this talk a few times, actually this is number 3 or 4, that I realized that my subconscious, as usual, had taken over any kind of clear or rational thinking that my brain is capable of at any given point. Because there's so much autism in my own family that I was raised in the stew of people who don't perceive and interact with the world that's around me, that I perceive and interact with. So, it's in my family of origin. I'm pretty sure my husband's sister, who's a neurologist, of course, who's a very nice person, Titch. My oldest son, Sam, who's the hero who, he served in the IDF, is completely in another world. And it's just so much in and around me that I think it popped out of my subconscious that way, and I called the talk neurodiversity. But my character, Joshua, who is the protagonist of this novel, and its narrator, has a normal neurology, flat out crazy off his rocker, because he is a character who has suffered a psychotic break when a true psychotic break at the beginning of the novel. It opens that way. So I'm just going to read. Just a little bit of the opening, and I got to tell you that I love Shomrei in the way we all do. Like I love Shomrei Too Much Praying, it's kind of, and I will do anything to speak in front of an audience because I'm a complete attention hound, probably from growing up in this crazy family that couldn't understand a word I was saying because they were speaking another language. But to come and do a book talk on Shabbos is like a big bummer. I can't self-contain books. No.
But anyway, we will tell them that they're available at
Amazon, usual places.
Watch on booksellers.
Yeah, I mean, she might have a couple left over, but she certainly will order them for you.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm going to read just the very beginning, the prologue to this novel, so you get the feeling of what it is. So the little teeny prologue is a question, which is, what challenge, experience, situation, or encounter have you had to overcome, and how has that event or set of events shaped you into becoming the kind of person you want to be in college, from the collective university application option 4. So, which I made that up, by the way, because you can't actually quote that in a book. So chapter 1, Dear Admissions Committee, I recently read an article in the newspaper that said that more and more high school seniors are writing essays about things like their penises, or the trauma of walking in on their parents in mid-private parental activity, or the year they spent eating their own toe fungus. The point of the article is that there are kids so desperate, this is before the scandal, so desperate to get into their first choice college that they'll write about just about anything in order to stand out against the crowd of your usual overachieving, quote, the year I volunteered in an AIDS hospital in Somalia, unquote, type essays. Whereas the best I can do is, in the braggosphere, is the following. I eventually passed all my classes, all of them, including the one I hated. But if you're serious and actually intend to read my application essay and not just throw it out based on my somewhat less than exemplary grades, I will tell you that though I never founded my own organic lettuce farm or helped build a rural hospital in a war-torn country on the other side of the globe, I can beat out just about anyone for sheer, awful, unparalleled, and original weirdness. In short, for about a year, the future of humanity rested on my shoulders, and that's because I had been chosen to save the world. I knew because I was given instructions by various voices, which sounded like human voices, only 1,000 times more powerful, with a depth of beauty impossible to replicate. And part of what I now understand to be a terrible hallucination was pretty good. The other part, not so much. In any event, being endowed with supernatural powers changed me, which perhaps is obvious given that, it's not every day of the week that suddenly, kerpoof, you're teleported from this pretty normal, middle-class suburban existence in northern New Jersey to being selected to save the world. Forget about college. Who needed a college degree when I was headed straight for omnipotent nirvana? Even so, after my stint as the hope of humankind was over, I didn't really think a whole heck of a lot about college at all. Instead, my plans for the future involved drooling, eating donuts, porn, the usual post-nut house kind of thing. And the worst of it, even though I had been told about my superhuman days, about what I'd done or said, I couldn't remember any of it. All I knew was that I somehow disposed of my left eye. It's the design of the book. That my girlfriend, the girl I loved, Sophie, the last person I remember seeing before I woke up in the hospital with bandages on my face, she was untraceable, as in vanished, as in abducted by aliens, as in gone. So yeah, I had only one eye, my girlfriend had vanished, and on top of everything else, I still had to live. So the book unravels all these. The rest of the book is an unraveling of what happened to my eye, what happened to my girlfriend, how am I going to live, and it's Joshua's story. And I'm going to get into the sources of this book in a second, but I want to say I was reminded by reading my college app questionnaire that when I applied to college in 1977, I still remember the college essay. It wasn't the Common App then, you know. You applied. I applied to my 3 colleges. Remember when people applied to 3 colleges? I applied to my Reach, the one I wanted to go to, and my backup, and that was it. Anyway, so the one I wanted to go to, which I went to, the college essay was there was a new president of the university who'd come in the year before I started. So it was my freshman year was his sophomore year at the university. I went to Tufts, and the college prompt was, Tufts President Shomrei says that of all his academic and intellectual challenges, nothing compares in terms of life experience to having fought on the front in the Second World War and helped defeat the Nazi foe. What in your life has been comparable? I'm like, oh, I can't say the word in shul. You know, I like, what? You know, like, you know, it's sort of like him. Like, I passed all my classes. I've only got caught smoking dope once. Like, what do you say? I mean, I don't know how any of us got into college that year, but it was incredible. I guess they're just trying to see if you can write. I don't know what I wrote, but anyway, I got in, and you know. But my own kids, you know, completely freaked out when they were going to college, and we don't quite know how they got in either, but they did. And they all graduated, which is kind of a miracle because we don't think my daughter actually went to any of her classes. So neurodiversity in this book. So the reason I wrote this book, which is very, very, very far afield from my own lived experience, is because it comes from sort of at its deepest reaches in terms of plot. There are two levels of deepest reaches of where this book came from. In terms of plot and sort of character, and an interesting situation to unravel narratively, where it comes from is my first boyfriend, my first boyfriend who died many years ago, whose name was Danny Greenberg. And Danny was my summer boyfriend in 1976, okay? We were both 16, 17, and we met, we were students of the same summer program it was Andover Summer School. It was for like kids like all the kids in Montclair who, actually want to go to prep school in the summer and learn stuff and meet boys. And and my older sister had gone and loved it, and I went, and it was Andover Summer School at Phillips Andover in Andover, Massachusetts. And Danny and I ended up in this, you chose one sort of major class. It was a 6-week program and one smaller class. And I chose acting because I wanted to be a stage actress, and the best I've done is get here to Shomrei, but it's a start, right? Could be a lot worse. And he was my summer sweetheart, and he was, just like every Jewish mother's dream for her daughter. He was tall, and he was handsome, and he was freckled, and he was smart, and he was a nice boy, and he really, 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 really loved me. And I really, really, really didn't love him, like, at all. But he was like my first boyfriend, and he was sweet, and I finally had a boyfriend. I didn't think I'd ever have a boyfriend, and it was sort of like an accomplishment. And he formed, at that point, kind of an obsessive adoration of me. Turned out he was from LA, but he went to Princeton. And I went to Tufts, so we were on the same coast the next year. And we maintained kind of friendship. And, but he was kind of getting weird in college, but, a lot of people do. And my girlfriends at Tufts were like, Jennifer, what's wrong with you? And my sisters were like, Jennifer, what's wrong with you? Like, this guy is hot. He totally was. But he just didn't make my little heart go pitter-pat then. And anyway, junior year abroad, I did a junior semester abroad. I went to London to study at Goldsmiths College in south of the river in London for my second semester of my junior year. And in those days, we wrote letters back and forth to kind of figure things out. And I wanted to go a week early. And I had a really good buddy from Tufts, Eric, who was already there for the year, studying at the London School of Economics, and I was going to stay with him for a week and his place, and kind of scoot around London with him, and then move into my dorm. And he was going to pick me up at the airport, really good friend. And lo and behold, I got to the airport, and there was Eric with Danny. Danny had been studying in Paris that year. But he came to London looking for me. This is before the internet. He found me. He was like a little, right? Mm. And again, it was like how amazing. It was fun. It was a little creepy. I didn't even know it was creepy. It was just like, okay, this guy's creeping me out, but he's Danny, and he's sweet, and he's handsome, and he's this and that. Anyway, that was pretty much my whole experience with Danny. By this time, we were old enough that he was like begging to have sex because, high school, we were still good kids. And I was like, no. And it was real cognitive dissonance on my part, I have to say, because I really thought I should be in love with him because of all of the above. And I just wasn't. And anyway, that was sort of pretty much the end of our relationship at all. He returned to Princeton the next year. I returned to Tufts. And my mother called me and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "What's up, Mom?" And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I have to back up. My mother and Danny's parents were friends through American Jewish Committee stuff. My father was a big mocker at the American Jewish Committee, and the Greenbergs were donors, and they were involved in LA. So they knew each other socially. And Mom calls, and she says, well, Danny Greenberg went from Princeton to New York. He was staying at the Y for the weekend, and he poked out his eye. His own eye in a psychotic break with, and I don't know what it was. I always had this feeling that it was like the pole of the bed kind of thing. You know, and he's withdrawn from Princeton as that. And anyway, that story just stayed with me and haunted me and stayed with me and haunted me. And I would then, you know, over the years, I actually ran into him once. I remember running into him in the East Village. I was living in the East Village then. My boyfriend Stuart was visiting me for the weekend. And Stuart was like, who's this creepy guy? You know, I'm like, that's Danny Greenberg, you know? Oh. And anyway, he finished up school at UCLA, and he was on meds. And I would hear from my mother about Danny Greenberg. You know, it seemed like he finally, you know, he had this psychotic break and no one saw it coming because no one knew what it was. Mm-hmm. You know, like your kid in school gets, like that age gets weirder and weirder, like, yeah, it happens, right? And people just didn't really know. They didn't know what the signs were. In retrospect, the signs were, you know, flashing big and bright like a sign in Times Square. But I think then people just didn't know. And anyway, so then I'm in Baton Rouge many years later. I'm married to Stuart. I'm like covered with babies. I was 36 years old. I remember exactly. My mother calls again. She says, "Are you sitting down?" I'm like, I don't know if I'm sitting down. I got too many babies to even be inside my own body at this point. I had a complete kind of split myself from, you know, that baby split when you just like, what's my name again? And she says, Danny Greenberg lit himself on fire in the front yard of his parents' home. It's awful. So anyway, this stuff was just so deep in me. And I tried to write about him before, but I got really, really caught up in sort of the biographical details where it hit my emotional spots. And if you start, I know in my experience writing fiction and nonfiction, I can always feel it when I'm getting too deep into my own autobiography. When it somehow, I don't have enough detachment from the emotional resonance of my own story to turn it into narrative, fictional or nonfiction narrative. If I can't kind of unhitch the emotional ding, ding, ding of my own story from the story, I can't tell it in a way that's interesting. It's just like diary writing or like what you tell your therapist. You know, it's just like coming out whole, you know, way too many details, and they don't add up to coherent narrative. So when I started writing, so I actually probably wrote 20 drafts of this book over 10 years. I don't even know why I started writing it, because the first few drafts I wrote, I remember thinking, this sucks and I hate it. I remember sitting, Stuart, as many of you know, my husband, he has spent a lot of time over the past few years in England being the smarty pants guy in residence at whatever university. And I went along on some of those pitches and some not, but the big one for him was Oxford, which was so great for him. And I went for 5 days, during which I was so miserable. The only thing that got me through the 5 weeks at Oxford was Orange is the New Black, which I just completely, But anyway, I remember sitting in the little flat I had in Oxford, which was perfectly comfortable, kind of dismal and awful, but comfortable physically, totally comfortable. hot water and everything. And sitting out the window, my little desk was at the window, and it's pouring out. So I think that's part of the reason I was depressed. It rained. It was like the worst weather in the Midlands that Britain had had, like, in, a millennia. It started the day I got there. And trying to write this and thinking, this is just the worst thing. And I kept sending different versions of it to my agent, who kept encouraging me. Like, she should have said, like, this is a loser, Jennifer. But anyway, by this time I'm too deep in. It's sort of like I was just mentioned, I play the piano. I'm really not very good at the piano, but I've been playing now for 10 years. I'm too deep in to stop. Like, it would be a waste. I bought a good piano. It'd just be like a waste of money. So I can't. It was sort of like that, a little bit like that with this and that. And I'm just, I don't know. And so, here are my notes right in front of me. Okay, so. I'm sorry, I totally lost her. Okay, so I had this book, and then I met Jerry Weiss, who's right here. So I met Jerry Weiss because I was one of many who had the privilege of driving Jerry to the hospital when Mrs. Weiss was very ill some years ago. And we started schmoozing. What do you do? I told him, blah, blah, blah. At this point, my first YA novel had just been published, and Jerry read it, and he said, "This is good." I said, "Thank you." And Jerry then offered to help, to read my manuscripts and give me his take on my work. And some of you know, probably not everybody, that Jerry kind of almost invented YA as a separate category. Is that fair to put it that way? How would you put it? Okay, so how would you put it? As an academic field of study.
Yeah. Anyway, active in young adult literature.
But you
I taught it.
He taught it. Anyway, Jerry is like, kind of, this is kind of, Jerry's still, in his own way, kind of a player in YA. And so Jerry has read a lot of my work at this point, actually, and he read this, and he said, "It's good, but," and he pointed out like these really obvious, now, once he's pointed them out, these obvious problems with the book, both in terms of getting it published, which is a commercial issue to do with what does and does not fly in the dumbass world of YA literature. When I say dumbass, it means like, if you're white, you can't write about black people. Like, that's just stupid, but that's all over, this PC stuff that goes into, the world of the arts, which really makes me want to vomit blood, but that's beyond my, that's sort of something I'm powerless over. So he points out that stuff I can't do, and he also points out the artistic problems, the narrative problems in the book. And I'm like, oh, duh, why didn't my dumbass agent point this out? Well, whatever. And she wasn't dumb, she just didn't see it. And I rewrote it, and then it got published, yay. And then I thought, well, the funnest thing about publishing a book, other than saying to some of my relatives who are really neat, "Oh, I have a book out," is the dedication. So the dedication is for Jerry Weiss, friend, mentor, Mitch.
Thank you.
And I meant it. And now I have another new YA out, and Jerry helped me with that one too. Only I don't know who I'm going to dedicate it to, because it's fun to spread it out. Maybe I'll dedicate it to you also. If you'll continue coming to my at Nourish Talks, at Scream, at Here We Are. At Here We Are. So in my novel, and it is a novel, it's Joshua's story, and he has got to figure out how to be a teenager a senior in high school all over again. And it's got lots of plots and subplots and motifs. And it's a dense, complex novel. It's actually kind of, it is a YA, but it's like crossover. Adults have enjoyed reading it too. I just want to tell one story about this book, and I sent this book to my father, who said he wouldn't read it because it would make him too sad. I'm like, Dad, he said, I knew Danny. I'm like, Dad, it's not about Danny. And I sent it, but that's my dad. And I sent it to my siblings for their kids who were, actually, I didn't even send it to my siblings because they're kind of jerks. And, but I did send it to my niece, Sophie, who's the youngest of all my parents' 11 grandchildren, and is a junior in high school. Some of you may have met her because she comes around sometimes with her mother, my sister, and her father, Matt, had the gorgeous photographs, a lot of them architectural photographs that were out last fall. So my sister and her family were around on occasion. But anyway, Sophie, I gave this to Sophie for her birthday. I sent it to her, and I wrapped it and I put it in brown paper, and I sent it to Sophie Grayson at her address. And my older sister unwrapped it and read it and told me she really liked it, and she wasn't going to give it to Sophie because she thought it would upset her.
Wow.
And this is why I'm nuts, because that is nothing in my family. So my niece Sophie, and this is not a secret, and any of you who may have met her or even seen her across the room will not be surprised to hear she is way on the spectrum. I mean, you can, if you are familiar with this world of autism spectrum, you can, Alzheimer's spectrum, you can see it, the way she moves. She's very clumsy, she can be very inappropriate. And the last time she was here for her father's photography show, she wore giant pink earmuffs. Mm-hmm. And that's because it protected her. She felt like it didn't really block out the noise, but it made her feel more secure in the swirl of noise that she does not know what to do with. Now, the kid is brilliant. She's at Bronx Science. So, which is a great fit for her because she's with her own tribe, and she has her own buddies. And she recently told me that she is known at Bronx Science as Mommy, because she's become sort of the mama figure of her little group. So I said to my sister, well, I kind of I inscribed it to Sophie. She said, well, it's going to upset her because she's got her own problems, and I don't want to give her any ideas. I'm like, you are the world's worst mother. I didn't say that. But I was thinking that. And I thought, no, she's just a bad sister. No, it's not even that. She's also probably a little titch on the spectrum, I'm thinking. But all the stuff is stuff I didn't really know until Rose, our Rose, who many of you know, and some of you don't, she and her twin brother will be 26 this summer. So Rosie is the opposite of the spectrum. She is so intuitive, and she thinks so holistically that she misses things like remembering to go to class and study. So she's completely right-brained. Her left brain just seems to be elsewhere. And in my family, that's being very different, because both our sons, as well as Stuart, were always the type who just nailed every test off, beyond the beyond on the SATs and the whatever they're called, PTSDs. I have PTSD, and the whatever LCS, LSDs, and all of that. And Rose just couldn't. But it was Rose who had studied. She had studied special ed in college. She wanted to be a special ed teacher. Who said, Mom, everybody in your family is on the spectrum, and so is Sam. You're Because the thing is, with Sammy and with my family, everyone was such a spectacular student and did so well in XYZ, whatever they put their minds to. Like, what are you talking about? but I didn't know about any of this until Rose began to clue me in, and then I began to read about it. And now that I know about it, I see it everywhere. It is so common in particularly in educated society, because what happens is, in the olden days, this smart, brilliant man who would go to MIT and then marry a normal woman who went to Vassar. Now those same women are going to MIT and they're breeding. And so the offspring are all, they get a little bit from mom and a little bit from dad, and together it makes somebody on the autism spectrum. Now this is real, I didn't make this up, there are like books on this. This is really what happens. So it's everywhere. So I no longer, people used to be so rude to me and I'd be like, what is your problem? And they're on the spectrum. They don't get it. I walked into, we were invited to, I'm now just rambling, you'll have to.
I'll have a question.
Yeah, I'll
Finish your story.
Okay, I'll tell a better story. So the other thing is, which goes to this book, one of the subplots, one of the main themes is sibling rivalry. So my Joshua has a brother 1 year younger who, when he goes back to school after having missed his entire senior year because he thought he was Jesus Christ, goes back to school, he's now a senior along with his own kid brother. And his own kid brother, who was always second fiddle because he was second kid, is now everything Joshua was, but better. So he's popular, he's had his growth spurt, he's tall, he's handsome, and he's a great runner. Joshua had been a great runner. And so there's this sibling rivalry along with these two brothers who can't reach each other. I don't know how to get over all these old misunderstandings and hurts. So I was thinking about, where did that come from? Where did that come from? My sister. So I actually am one of four, and we were just raised. Well, I used to say we were raised by wolves, but as many of my friends have pointed out, we would have been better raised by wolves. So we were just sort of raised to eat each other. It was just a constant, fight to the death. So it's really a miracle any of us is still living. And anyway, so this is just an illustration of the sibling rivalry that never dies. So I got an email from a very distant cousin whose name is Gloria Felsenthal. Her son is Ed Felsenthal, who's the editor-in-chief of Time magazine, who I only know, he's like a sixth cousin, really distant. I only know Ed because he lives in Montclair, and we met and da-da-da. But we knew of each other because years and years ago, I wrote a story called my grandmother's memory books. I wrote an article that appeared in the Washington Post Sunday magazine, and it was about my maternal grandmother and her memory books, which my mother had given me to what she called her memory books, which were her scrapbooks from her childhood in Henderson, Kentucky, and this long vanished world. And it was a story about what am I supposed to do with this stuff? What does this mean to me? Da, 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 da. Anyway, Ed Felsenthal, now the editor of Time, saw it because he was then living in Washington. He found me through whatever, we talked. Years later, I met his mother, I was visiting him, and she's a family historian. Okay, that's backstory. This is why Stuart says I talk way too much. And I got an email from Gloria, who lives in the Mid-South, and she said she's recently found some other relatives named so-and-so and so-and-so, and they want to get in touch with me because they're pretty sure that they're related to me on the Moses side as well as on the Felsenthal side. And by the way, could I send her the article my older sister wrote about my grandmother's memory books? And I wrote and said, my older sister is a federal judge in Manhattan. I'm the writer. And she wrote and she said, would you please send me the article, that beautiful article your older sister, who's so brilliant, wrote about, that was in the Washington Post, about, I have to say 4 times that I wrote it before she got it. And this is my life story. Because my older sister was always the one with the Shomrei. in my family. So that emotional stream is also in the story. And I'm wondering, like, how old do I have to be before I can just not care? Like, how old? Please, God, enough, right? Enough. So anyway, it's part of my narratives. It all goes into the books, and that all goes into the books. So that's what I got.
So let's see if there.
Oh, and I'm going to Washington on a train at 1, where I'm going to be immersed in my family.
So let's see if there are some questions that might help Jennifer deal with her family at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, right. And my dad, I'm going to say, so my father, this is how
What
crazy.
we know.
He's been here. So my father turns 90. I'm going to tell two. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Two quick stories. My father turns 90 in July. Mazel tov, great. I'm going to be a wreck when he dies, but I don't think he ever is going to. No, really, he can't. He's immortal. And so I turn 60 in June, and Sam, my eldest, turns 30 in August. So I said months ago, isn't that nice, right? Isn't that sweet? So Dad lives partly in New York with his wife, his second wife, the unmentionable second wife, and in Washington and a few other places too, because real estate is his, he likes to collect real estate. And so I thought, so he and Fern, my unmentionable stepmother, have a lovely place on the east side of New York. So I said, Dad, let's have a 30, 60, 90 birthday party in New York. Sam lives in New York, I live here. We'll have like all of us, and wouldn't that be so sweet? He says, no, I'm having a 90 birthday party just for me, and it's gonna be in Maine.
Maine?
Where he has a house in Maine, because that's so you can get there so easily. Because it's only a 2-hour drive from Portland, Maine, inland, right? So impossible to get to. So anyway, he's doing it. So that's Dad. But this is the same father who he built his dream house. My siblings and I still call it the new house. We moved in 1973. This is his dream house that he built for his growing family. We were busting out of the old house, which he moved into in 1960, to the new. So he built the new house, and for pretty much from the time my youngest sister went off to college, my late mother was begging my father to sell that big old place way in the middle of not nowhere, it's in McLean, but it was nowhere when he built it. But no neighbors, just woods, fields, beautiful, 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 but isolated. And sell that place and move back to Georgetown, where they had started young married life when Georgetown wasn't expensive at all. But by this time it was very expensive, but who cares, because my father was rich by then. But so, he just loved the place, and he didn't sell it. So anyway, a few years ago he decided, long after my mother was gone, he was going to move to Georgetown, where he could walk to shul, and he's old. And who needs 20 acres in Virginia when you're almost 90? So he finally kind of got the memo. So he not only bought a house, he completely gutted it, got renovation. So my 90-year-old father has a 7-bedroom house. This is the stock I come from. This is all I'm saying. So it was either like become a drug addict or become a writer.
Well, we're glad that you became a writer.
Or stand-up comic, because the other thing that people who are raised like this they're like desperate inside, as I am my whole life. So you become a stand-up comic because you cannot get enough attention, So which is another reason why I have dogs.
They love you.
They're so good. They're good, right? Yes. They're my therapy. Yeah. So anyway, I'm done.
Thank you. Understanding.
Where do you start?
Understanding the roots of the themes of your book is something that those of us who don't write rarely get a glimpse into.
Well, it's just like
it's wonderful. So
it comes from here, though. It doesn't really come.
Yeah,
from
no. I get it
here.
Yeah. I can see the hole in there. We're all looking into the hole there. So, questions.
The hole in my soul, right?
No questions.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
So, I know I've seen a lot of your paintings.
Right. You have one.
I have a painting, which I dearly love. We all love it. And I just wonder, because we have never talked about like your paintings and your writings and how they, or do they ever, and have you ever, and how does that relate? Like,
I don't know. I mean, my earliest impulse was to paint. In fact, it was the art room. I went to this little private school in McLean until 8th grade, and then I went to the high school, the public high school, which was great. And I was really, really, really an outcast at the little private school, partly because it was like super waspy, and partly because it was super athletic, and partly because I was already, cuckoo crazy. So I would have had a hard time anywhere. And but what saved me there was the art room, and there was a teacher, Mr. Hebler, who was this gentle, kind man with a soft voice, and he said I could come into the art room anytime and just paint. So whenever I didn't have classes, as I got older and I had more, kind of a little bit more control over my own schedule in middle school and forward, when the other kids were out, on the fields doing what normal kids do, I was in the art room painting, and that really was something really deep in me. But in high school, I stopped. My interest in art completely just fell away from me. I think in part because in high school, the art classes there were pretty serious. They actually wanted to teach you things like perspective and how to mix paints, and the art students, the serious art students in high school many of them ended up going to art school. They were really, it's a different thing. You have a son in art school. It's just a whole different deal. And I didn't want to do that. I just kind of wanted to play with paint. And also by then I was convinced that the only way forward for me was to make my mark academically. And so I really pushed my academic, more cerebral side. And that was in part because I really did have it. And in high school, I caught on, and I found I was very blessed. I had incredibly great teachers who saw something in me that nobody else had and encouraged that. So I went with that. I went with that side. The painting fell, I talked about this before, the painting came back to me in an hour. I was in Baton Rouge. I've told this story so many times, you probably know it. I was in Baton Rouge. I've been working in volunteering in an AIDS, like a hospital, a residence for men and women dying of AIDS. I've been doing it for years. It was full gospel. Everybody there was African American, full gospel. They sing gospel songs, and I would sit there and kind of crying, but not joining in. Long story short, Jennifer, why aren't you singing? And it wasn't because I was Jewish, it was because I can't sing, because I got a bad voice. I said, I can't sing. They said, do you want us to pray over you? Jesus will give you a voice. I said, sure. Every week for a while, hands on, praying over my head, dear Lord Jesus Christ, give your daughter Jennifer the strength to praise you with her voice as she wants to love you as you love her, grant her the singing voice so she may sing your praises, Jesus. I'm like, this is great. I loved it because it was just, it was just love. And anyway, I would go home after this. I'm like, I'm going to sing. It's going to be a miracle. I believe in miracles. God parted the Red Sea. He can certainly let me sing. No big deal. Come on, let's see some action here. Let's see some action. And couldn't sing. And during this time, one day, Rose was 8. She was painting in the kitchen with her stuff from Walmart. After 10 minutes, she was bored, as 8-year-olds are. She went across the street to play with Emma, her best friend, who's now a lawyer. How scary is that? And I picked up one of her paintbrushes, intending to start cleaning up her mess, and I started painting. Boom. And that was it. I never stopped. So I think they just reflect, there's that joke. You ask a Jew for his opinion, you got 3. It's sort of like you ask me the simple question. I'm telling this whole long, many volumes, Proustian story. I just think they come out of almost different places for me. I think the painting comes out more raw, it's very childlike. So sometimes when I'm really depressed, anxious and depressed, and the world is black. I only have, only have at this point in my life 2 houses. What's wrong with me? 2 is my upper limit, by the way. I'm getting older, poor me, that kind of thing. I'll go into my studio and I'll see my paintings and they're so vibrant and they're so joyous. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not that depressed and I don't know it. There's something else in there. And I think in the painting I access that. In the writing I go darker.
So I'm interested in your writing process. 10 years, it's a commitment to a writing.
I didn't mean it.
Oh, to your writing process.
Yeah, I meant it to be 10 months. It's sort of like you have a baby, you think, isn't this great? And then you realize you're stuck with them.
Yeah, I think one of the things is like, because I enjoy writing, and I started 2 pieces that I love, and then there's this day where you think, well, I have to make some time for this. If I want to take it seriously, see it to the end, I have to make time. And then like the first day where I have that time, I'm like, oh, I left the writing at work. And then the next day you're like, oh, it was in my other bag. And then the next, and then just life seems to get in the way.
Email.
So how do you, can you
Email
talk
it
a
to
little bit
yourself.
about how you do your real life and then how you do this thing?
Well, first of all, look, you have a full-time job and how many young children?
one
Okay.
child.
That's enough.
But everybody has something.
Well, look, I had young children. I now have old children. In fact, Sam is really great. He's really great. Once Sam was born, I never went back to the office. Sam was my excuse to not work. So I set it up for myself. I was not going to marry another artist. That was not ever in the cards for me. Because there's no way I'm going to support some dude. He's going to be supporting me, especially if we have babies. And I'm not embarrassed to say this. And I never wanted to work. I never had a job that I felt that was anything other than incredibly boring for me. I don't know how to work. I do not play well with others. One reason I don't go on committees. I don't do it. If you don't want to see me, you will not like me because I will be a bad person. But writing for me, I went in it, when I was in high school, I made a conscious decision that one day, this is really embarrassing to say, but it's totally true, and I think it's very common. I decided one day I'm going to be a writer, a published writer. My name is going to be up on lights, and everybody in my family who thought I was the village idiot, which was everybody, can kiss my rosy red ass. That was my feeling. And I thought, by the time I'm 30, I'll be published in the New Yorker, and then ba-da-dee. And my first book was actually published by Simon & Schuster, which is like, I made it, ooh, look at me now, and it sold pretty well, got a lot of publicity, it was okay. And I just thought, that's it, I've cleared that hurdle. It's all just, it's all, the road is open for Jennifer Moi. Here I come. It didn't work out that way at all. It is a lot of painful, frustrating drudgery, day in, day out, with a lot of wonderful moments, hours, sometimes days of, I'm flying with the angels. But this has been since I was 15 years old. This is not, to the degree I am, I always was talented, talent. Okay, you're talented, talent, Like, a lot of people are talented. Like, you can't do it without talent. But it was like, it's sort of the only thing I ever wanted to do. And it's the only thing I ever really did do. And this is just my story. I'm reading a novel now. I just started it. I can't remember what it's called. The guy who wrote it, he's 30. He's bloody 30 years old. I hate him. I hate him. I hope I hope he has a long, miserable suffering, something that withers him away, body and soul, and that he doesn't get to 33, this is bad that he should publish his great book at 30. That didn't happen to me. And it couldn't have, because I was not writing well enough. It's just been a really long haul for me, but it is every single day. Not every single day, I'm totally lying. it is many, many, many days of my year. I spend much more time writing than I do painting or anything else.
So one, and then Toby, and then
So I don't know what to tell you. That's just me though. Other people have other experiences.
Sarita.
So actually, I'm interested in a couple of things, and you can talk about
Loud,
either one.
loud.
I'm interested, I think of a couple of things you can talk about either one or neither. One is the genre switching, because I know you write novels, you also write nonfiction, and then you've written travel stuff, so more
Right.
sort of expository stuff. So, the process of being able to do that kind of switch, I find really interesting. But that's one thing. So the other thing is when you mentioned about the safe space thing, which drives me nuts.
I
Like
didn't
our
say
lives
anything
have to be
about
totally
safe space.
safe. But with that framework, you're writing, for younger people. How do you then have to write differently so that things aren't so unsafe for the YA audience as opposed to adults?
Jerry could probably handle that question better than I do because I don't write safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually didn't mention safe spaces. What I mentioned was the PC, which is part of the safe space thing, particularly in YA writing, that there are all these, it's leaking into the writer sphere in general. Like, you can't, there was a big blow up, I don't know, a year ago. Some guy who'd written, I think he was a white man,
Yeah.
who'd written in the voice of a black homeless man a poem. It was a poem. And it was published in The Nation. And when his identity was discovered, there was a huge hue and cry. How could The Nation publish this, this false poem? How dare he claim the voice of a black homeless man? And on top of that, it was coded with racist, undertones, I don't know. And The Nation made a big apology, and then the poet, the author, made a big apology. And what is it? It's either good art or it's not. What the heck is this? But this is coming from the left. In Nazi Germany, and it came from the right. So we cannot have, in my view, this kind of putting up sensitivity rules around any art. Look, that there was that elephant poop painting years ago. Who made that?
Oh, yeah.
And there was a big hue and cry over how gross that was. I'm like, I don't know. I think that's stupid. But it's either good art or it's not. There's a lot of really, really bad, expensive art in the world. Do you guys ever go to the piers? Like, you look at this stuff. It's $200,000, and you're looking at something, and you have I have the Homer Simpson reaction, like, I could do that, because it's such bad stuff out there, but it's art or it's not, and that's sort of, it can be bad art, but there's tons of bad art, there's tons of bad writing. For me personally, I'm really bad at staying within genre restrictions, which Jerry keeps pointing out to me. He's like, but I'm just bad at it. And in terms of the other kinds of writing I do, this and that, I basically, because we've moved around so much, I will take any assignment that comes my way. So that's how I got into the travel writing. We were living in the back of Beyond in Baton Rouge, and the New York Times gave me travel assignments, and I'm like, I'm there.
So I'm gonna move this because
Sorry.
here's in just a few minutes, I'm going to ask everyone to join us in the sanctuary because we're going to have some conversation about the latest horrific act in San Diego.
Ask a quick question.
So quick question, Toby, and then
Question is very quick. See if you can do a quick answer.
Yeah,
You
never.
mentioned, and one of the publicity things about this is that you were going to talk about university presses.
Oh, no, that was,
What's the advantage of a university press?
so that was for the talk of the library. They wanted me to talk about university presses. So there is no advantage to university presses.
None? Well, that was short. There was one more question someone had.
But it's better to be published by university press, as I was, than to not be published.
Okay.
And get more hands-on attention.
there were two questions back there. Do one of you want to pick, Deborah? And then
Mine isn't a question, just a comment. I just wanted to say that I think this is a totally separate conversation that we can have another time, but I just wanted to push back just a little bit on the idea that it's like the PC police coming down and saying like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like there's more to that conversation, which is that there are a lot of people who aren't getting published, whose voices aren't getting heard, and I think that's the root of that conversation. I think it's an important conversation to have, is like, who's getting published, who's not getting published, whose voices are getting heard, and I don't know, I just think it's a much more nuanced and complex conversation that, like, if we want to go there, that we could have, maybe
So
not today,
that will
but like
be-
at another time.
If we come back next year, let's do a panel on that.
That's a good
Because I
idea.
have there are so many published writers in this congregation, let's do that. So think about that and save that question. Megan, you get one more?
Well, I was actually just gonna ask, I mean, you answered it a little bit, or maybe Jerry wants to speak to it, what makes something YA versus not YA? Like with my daughter Sarah, who was sitting here before, she basically just skipped that. So she read children's literature, and then she basically just started reading adult literature, and there's a lot, and because one thing about YA that's true is it's not necessarily the case that the themes are more appropriate for a child. So let's say you have a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and what you're looking for in literature is both that it will engage them, that it will be challenging and rich, but that it won't talk about things that they're not ready for, right? But it doesn't necessarily do that either.
Sure.
Jerry,
It's
this
a
is for you.
changing field.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, that's an oversimplification.
Totally. That's very
To me, they must understand in YA literature, the central characters have to be YA.
right.
Yeah, that's,
And that's
Right.
it. It's, but today, you also have to understand, Jennifer, I hate saying it, but I have to say it, so
Yeah.
you can throw me out. There are certain words you can't use,
Right.
because you have
Librarians
to
go
keep in
crazy.
mind that for a YA book, you're dealing also not only with the writing of it, you're dealing with the marketing of it.
Right, I see.
And
Right. It's
This
about
is
who
a-
it's pitched to. Yeah.
wine country,
Librarians.
Yeah.
and you have parents that will jump on you
Yes.
if you put something in a book.
Certain language.
It doesn't take much to get a book banned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And publishers are very conscious of what they will accept. And if you're not willing to listen to that, go your way.
So.
But the point is this, is that I tried in working with Jennifer, I said, I've got to point out marketing is going to
Yeah.
make some remarks. These are things we can't put in
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah.
You can have sex, you can have other things, but there's language and restrictions,
Right.
and there are relationships.
Yeah. That's very helpful. Have either of you read Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward?
I have
It's an adult, it's marketed as an adult book. There's a 15-year-old protagonist. I read it. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read, and I gave it to Sarah also, but it's the kind of book that poses the question for me. It's a child who's at the center of it, so why is that not equally YA than other books that are packaged and marketed as
Well,
YA?
It depends on the age.
Yeah, and also,
Well,
like this
this
book,
covered now.
this book, Jerry said I should get it published as an adult book.
Right, because it was so on the edge.
It's, right,
Yeah.
so,
But Megan, think about it, like right now, maybe if To Kill a Mockingbird were to be published now, maybe it would be billed as YA, right? I mean, these coming of
Right.
age books.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
So much
that-
of which
it's-
are the
it's
books we all
artificial
carry
in
with
some
us.
ways, yeah.
it is artificial in some ways.
Yeah.
So on that note, on one unanswerable question, which we can keep talking about, I'm going to say thank you to Jennifer. Thank you for bringing us to a close. It was wonderful. This is wonderful, so thank you.